Welcome to this overview of the book Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, which is subtitled Daring Greatly and Rising Strong at Work. Brené defines a leader as anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and who has the courage to develop that potential. And shares her research has confirmed the definition of vulnerability is the emotion that we experience during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome, which means vulnerability has nothing to do with weakness, but everything to do with uneasy experiences, anxiety, uncertainty, and resisting putting on our armor to protect ourselves. And vulnerability is the parent of all the skills that underpin daring leadership, such as new perspectives, fresh ideas, the adaptability to change, having the hard conversations, problem solving, ethical decision making, recognition, and resilience. However, Brené clarifies that vulnerability isn't the gooey centre of hard emotions that we work full-time to avoid. It is the core of all emotions, because to feel is to be vulnerable, and like it or not, humans are emotional beings. Section 1 of Part 1 of the book relates to the 6 myths of vulnerability. Myth 1 is vulnerability is weakness. In truth, vulnerability is the emotion experienced during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And no one has yet been able to give Brené a single example of courage that they have witnessed or experienced that did not require experiencing vulnerability. Myth 2 is, I don't do vulnerability. In truth, every day we are defined by experiences of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. There is no opting out of this. So you have 2 choices. You can either consciously do vulnerability or accept it will unconsciously drive your thinking and behavior through your unacknowledged fears. Myth 3 is, I can go it alone. This myth arises from the thinking, I don't need anyone. However, all humans are wired for group interaction and survival, and as a result, all human endeavours require connection that is genuinely felt by the other person. Myth 4 is, you can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability. It is true, highly regulated systems can have their vulnerability engineered out. However, any conversation holding someone responsible, especially where ethics and values are involved, bring up uncertainty, risk considerations, and emotional exposure, especially when there is a lot of money, power, or influence at stake. Myth 5 is trust comes before vulnerability. The truth is, we need to trust to be vulnerable, but we also need to be vulnerable in order to build trust. Because trust is the stacking and layering of small moments and reciprocal vulnerability over time, which means trust and vulnerability grow together. So to betray one is to destroy both. Myth 6 is vulnerability is disclosure. That is not disclosing personal experiences and openly sharing emotions in all cases. It is considering the questions. What is my role? What is their role? Why are we sharing? And what sharing is productive and appropriate? This is creating a safe container so the person you are speaking to feels they can be open and are safe having this conversation. It is also setting clear boundaries on what's okay and what's not okay and why. Because vulnerability minus boundaries is not vulnerability. It's confession, manipulation, desperation, shock, and awe. Brené uses the term rumbling with vulnerability to mean a discussion, conversation, or meeting defined by a commitment to leaning into vulnerability, to stay curious and generous, to stick with the messy middle of problem identification and solving, to take a break and circle back when necessary, to be fearless in owning our parts, and to listen with the same passion with which we want to be heard. So when someone says, let's rumble, it is a cue to show up with an open heart and mind so we can serve the work and each other rather than our ego. Because it is important for a leader to understand daring leadership is ultimately about serving other people, not ourselves, and why we need to choose courage. In section 3 of the book, Brené relates behaviour to armour and a leader's need to invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behaviour. Because people bring their whole selves to work, even if the culture rewards pretending, performing, pleasing and perfecting, rather than vulnerability, empathy and emotional literacy. Brené covers 16 examples of armoured leadership, which include a focus on perfectionism and what still needs to be achieved, taking on some form of addiction, having an attitude of, if I'm to win, you have to lose, and I'm more important than you, closing discussions down with a clear this is how it is to be done, hiding behind cynicism and criticism, as well as weaponizing fear and uncertainty, attaching worth to productivity and rewarding exhaustion as a status symbol, and tolerating discrimination and requiring others to change to fit in. But thankfully, Brené also shares what is required to eliminate these things to create strong organizations. Brené also covers that although shame is universal and one of the most primitive emotions we experience, everyone is afraid to talk about it. And the less we talk about it, the more control it has over our lives, because the basis of shame is the fear of being found to be unworthy and rejected, because shame is always telling you, you aren't good enough, and incredulously demanding to know, who do you think you are? However, it is wrongly assumed that shame makes us walk a moral path. The truth is the opposite. It is more likely to drive destructive, hurtful, immoral, and self-aggrandizing behavior. Shame resilience is the ability to move from shame to empathy through practicing the authenticity when we experience shame. To move through the experience without sacrificing our values and to come out on the other side with more courage, compassion, and connection than we had going into it. However, empathy is also often misunderstood. It isn't connecting to an experience. It's connecting to the emotions the person is feeling that underpin the experience. Further, it is not possible to take off our own lens and look through the other person's lens. All we can do is honour that this is the truth for them without being judgmental and learn to communicate our understanding of their feelings. So how to do this? Grounded confidence is the messy process of learning and unlearning, practicing and failing and surviving a few misses. It is built on self-awareness and practice and supports leaving off our armour, our efforts to be brave, and tethers us to our values, and which is the outcome being sought from practicing rumbling with vulnerability. The third part of grounded confidence is curiosity, which Brené defines as an act of vulnerability and courage. But curiosity is also uncomfortable as it involves uncertainty and vulnerability. As it says, no worries, I love a wild ride. I'm up for wherever this goes, and I'm in it for however long it takes to get to the heart of the problem. I don't have to know the answers or say the right thing. I just have to keep listening and keep questioning. Rumbling in the arena, particularly when trying to be brave, can be confusing and overwhelming, especially when the critics are extra loud. This is when we are most likely to forget our values and try to prove ourselves. This means we must be able to name our North Star and to realize we only have one set of values. We do not have professional and personal values. Our values are what is sacred to us in all situations. Knowing there is no choice because our North Star is crystallized in our mind. Brené shares one of the quickest ways to get another person to armor up and cease to be able to engage in a meaningful way is to question their trustworthiness. But the more pacific we are in our examples, the greater the chance we will be heard and real change will occur. To assist with this, Brené came up with the acronym BRAVING. B stands for boundaries. This is respecting boundaries, and when it's not clear where they are, asking. R is for reliability. This is doing what has been said will be done, but also staying within your competencies and limitations so you can deliver. A is for accountability, which is owning your mistakes, apologizing, and making amends. V is for vault, which is never sharing what isn't yours to share, no matter the situation. I is for integrity, which means choosing courage over comfort, choosing right over fun, fast, or easy, and living your values. N is for non-judgment, which is being able to ask for what we need and talk about what we feel. And G is for generosity, which is giving the best possible interpretation to others' intentions, words, and actions. Choosing courage over comfort also gives us the chance to walk into our story and write the ending. But this requires us to learn how to land before we jump, because it is easier to rise to challenges when we have got the knowledge, practiced, accepted we are going to screw it up at some point, but that we will learn some more and then repeat the cycle all over again. This makes us more than the concepts of fall forward or fail fast, because it includes reset skills and honest rumbles about shame, because shame almost always accompanies failure. Brené ties all these things up as a revolution both within ourselves and within the people and organizations we are influencing. But this comes with a warning. You're going to confuse, piss off, and terrify lots of people, including yourself. One minute you'll pray the transformation stops, and the next you'll pray that it never ends. But persevering will be well worth it, because Brené's research has identified 3 truths. First, an organization's level of collective courage is the best indicator of its ability to be successful in terms of its culture, developing leaders, and achieving its mission. Second, the greatest challenge in developing brave leaders is helping them to acknowledge and answer their own call to courage. And thirdly, we fail the minute we let someone else define success for us. This book covers so much more than shared in this overview, including the true meaning of guilt, humiliation, and embarrassment, as well as how these correlate to shame and how we behave. Brené also covers the components of empathy and what empathy isn't, as well as questions we can consider as part of our skill building. There are great exercises to help you to do things like identifying the 2 values that drive your behavior no matter the situation, as well as the impact knowing your values to this depth has on giving and receiving feedback. This is the first of Brené's books I have read, and I hadn't seen any of her videos, so I found I had to keep the explanation of vulnerability and rumbling where I could see it to remind myself what the concepts mean. However, other than this was an easy-to-read book. A goal Brené had for this book is that as a result of reading it, the reader will make at least one meaningful behavior change. Therefore, I highly recommend this book for those who are keen to create strong organizations through finding the potential in people and processes. Thank you for viewing this video. Please like and subscribe and click on the notification bell if you wish to be notified when further book overviews are uploaded.